Okay, so we have lots of names, lots of things to kind of go over in a relatively short amount of time because first time with baby, figuring things out. So we're going through kind of the church history, doing it basically by century. Last time we talked specifically about the Council of Nicaea, which does happen in the 4th century, but I feel like that kind of needed its own.
Could you read the overview, like just a.
So basically, the Council of Nicaea was brought together, was convened by Constantine. According to, I believe it's Jerome that wrote this. Somebody's put out a specific number of like 318 bishops. Whether that many showed up or not, they were allowed to bring. So one bishop was allowed to bring 2 presbyters and I think 3 or 4 deacons with them.
A big group of people.
So we're potentially a pretty sizable group, but they were convened because you had the Orthodox view of Jesus's divinity, and then you had the Arian view of Jesus' divinity. Not to be the Arian here,
Not the Hitlerian.
Yeah, not to be confused with that Arian.
You just put the name with it.
Arianus, I think was his name.
Arius.
Arius, yeah.
Nazi in there.
That's
And something's going on.
It all started in the 4th century.
Yeah.
So Arius basically, if you go back, we talked a little bit about modalism. So modalism is believing that you have
First, you have God the Father, which became God the Son, who then became the Holy Spirit.
yeah,
One after the other.
but he can revert back to either any of the modes depending on what needs to be done there.
But he can't exist as 2 at the same time, which, as we know,
Exactly.
that's not what we believe. We believe that he absolutely can because he's not bound by our
Yeah.
2D
So
view of the world.
this is modalism. The Trinitarian view or the Orthodox view.
It's like 3 overlapping circles.
This is the most classic kind of depiction of it. God is the Father, or God is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, but the Son is not the Father is not the Son, the Son is not the Holy Spirit is not all that.
It's if you were to describe it, someone would say that this is an irrationality that doesn't make any sense, is what some.
Pretty much. Which is where, and this actually comes directly from Tertullian's formula of understanding the Trinity, which you have one substance, i.e. God, but in 3 persons, which we still use today. But we have modalism, which believe it was Origen. Origen kind of started this train of thought of pushing back against modalism, and then it goes to I forgot who I said was Arian's teacher, but it goes throughout the centuries, kind of develops a little bit, and it goes from basically being that the Father does not become the Son, but it slowly kind of translates over time that the Father is not the Son. That the Son is basically a created creature. And so you have things like the adoption theory, which is where Jesus was just a man, but then he was adopted by God to carry out his will.
Lucian of Antioch.
Lucian of Antioch, that's who it was. I knew there was an L in there somewhere.
I was just
Um,
checker last week.
But
I was the only one here about it.
and so we finally get to Arius, who basically puts forward that it's not this or this, it's you have the Father, and he kind of doesn't really talk about the Spirit, but he's not the Son. The Son is not begotten, or he's begotten, but he's made. So So he's now a created creature, which is not the Orthodox thing. So more or less, Constantine is hearing these two opposing views, convenes the council to discuss this. Because Constantine is very new convert.
The church still holds him as the first.
What's the name of the battle?
The Battle of the X Bridge, Milvian Bridge,
Melvin.
when he defeated the
Yeah.
what was his name?
So
He was the pagan emperor of Rome, and there's a lot of propaganda in that story.
and there were at that point there were technically four emperors of Rome. Two were greater, two were lesser. Constantius, who was Constantine's father, was one of the greaters. He died, so Constantine kind of absorbed his half, and then the other two fought, and that became another half, and then they fought, and kind of became.
I believe you're talking about Maximinus Daza,
Yes.
aka some call him aka the last pharaoh of Egypt, because he was the last one who actually had a name given to him by the Egyptian priesthood.
Yeah. And they fought, and that's when Constantine purportedly sees the cross in the sky, and here's the message: if you bear this image, you will win. Something along those lines. Heavy paraphrase there.
And probably a little bit of church, fluffing.
Probably. But this is where we end up with the Cairo symbol.
I love that symbol. It's
that resembles
it
for
really
Christ.
is.
That's kind of where it comes from. And of course I drew it so wonderfully, but whatever. So Constantine converts to Christianity.
Suppose there's a lot of debate if he actually did or didn't, but the fact is he was very involved with Christianity.
He was, and he did kind of treat it almost like some of the other pagan religions, where you do the thing and that makes the gods happy and you just live your life. That was kind of, based on reports, that was kind of his position with it.
This is where it gets weird, because before he became Christian, he was supposedly a follower of Sol Invictus, the same god that Aurelian worshipped, which was basically, I like to call it the Roman paganist version of monotheism, where Sol Invictus was all of the gods at once. Like he was it's almost like Optimism of old ancient Egypt. I feel like there's always been a movement within pagan societies that, monotheism is actually the way. I think that's always been like an undercurrent.
There has, and that's an interesting thing, because that kind of goes back to the whole Tower of Babel thing, because prior to that, it was monotheism. And then when they break up, it kind of slowly splits into these other things, but there's always this like pull back.
I mean, there was always an undercurrent of monotheism that it never became too popular until Judaism, and then spread from there. But before,
but even with that, you still have one who's like the supreme. So there's still this like flavoring of monotheism in there. But so we have Constantine, who with the Edict of Milan, basically, the Edict of Milan does not make Christianity the state religion. It basically just says, hey, Christians, it's no longer a criminal offense to be a Christian.
he made it legal.
Basically, that's all he did. He just removed criminal punishment from that.
It's actually amazing how fast Rome became Christian, like how fast Rome converted after that.
Yeah. He then becomes the emperor of Rome, and his mother Helena basically goes to the Middle East on pilgrimage and finds all this stuff and founds two very particular important churches. One is the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem.
I heard of that church.
The other one is has a really long name, the Sepulchre of the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Also, and this is where I'm probably, if there's any Catholics watching, I'm probably gonna make them a little mad, but she's the reason why we have like 90% of the relics, because she would go around and she would find things and be like, this is whatever. So her main thing that she found was the piece of the true cross.
Ooh.
Did she?
The
I don't
funny
think so
thing-
because,
Wood doesn't last that long.
well, also they didn't necessarily make new crosses for every single person. So
Yeah, I
it's
was about to say they probably just reused it.
Jesus was probably not the first one crucified on that one, nor was he the last. They probably used it until it fell to pieces and then made a new one.
It was like it's the true
Waste
cross.
not.
Like, that's a
It's
piece of
ancient
wood.
Rome. Waste not.
Exactly.
Waste not.
Prove it ain't.
Want not.
Yeah.
It's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Guy falls off the cross with the piece coming with him. Yeah, we need a new one.
Yeah.
He's
Um,
gonna die.
I don't.
Don't you get to go
Relics
free
are a
control?
weird thing for me because I'm like,
Or is that when you get hanged?
well, if you think so, then you know what? Go for it. Just as long as you aren't worshiping it.
Yeah.
This is when everything started to be like we're like idolizing these specific places, and I'm like,
hmm
yeah, he was buried there, but he's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
why?
She did not find the holy hand grenade of Antioch though.
Oh man,
That was Brother Maynard.
Brother
Anyways.
Maynard found it.
But
That long intro with that
Yeah,
long
there-
introduction.
there-
Absolutely.
this last September we went to kind of this passion play or whatever, and one of the guys stood up and was saying something that they were building in the Middle East a church over the stone that sealed Jesus' tomb, and they were going to remake a replica of it there. And he said something, he's like, we know without a shadow of a doubt that this is the stone. We've known it since day one. And I'm like,
How?
except they don't.
It was
But how? Her.
for all intents and purposes.
She found it.
It was a
Okay.
rock.
Mm-hmm.
All it was.
This is where a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this is where a lot of the
A
ego
big
Roman paganism kind of started
Yeah.
infiltrating
Kind
into
of.
the ranks because before that, you didn't see that.
But also at this point, there's a lot of Greek thought kind of already in Christianity.
That is
It's
also
where you
true.
get this kind of like, I think Docetism, Donatism are kind of offshoots of,
It's kind
which-
of what happens when you put too much Greek into the church.
yeah, and so you get to the point where you have these sects who believe that like the material reality is not what's true reality. It's just an after image of what is actually true. And you can take a whole philosophy class on all of that with Plato, because they can explain it better than I can.
Like I said, it feels like a lot of the old heresies were basically just ancient Greeks trying to interpret Judeo like Jewish doctrine through a Greek lens, and that's what they came
So,
out with.
There's a good bit of that, but a lot of the heresies, especially the ones that kind of revolve around Jesus, if you really look at it, they do one of two things. They either heavily emphasize Jesus' humanity to the point where it now no longer becomes orthodox, or they heavily emphasize his divinity where he's no longer human, and they just like remove the humanity. So they're either removing the divinity or removing the humanity.
That makes so much sense because that seems to be a big hang up even today for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
And so I don't necessarily think that came from a place of like, maniacally
Intentional malice.
twisting their hands and be like, we're gonna have a heresy here. I think it came from a genuine place of like, no, this is like, Jesus is the central figure. We need to get this right. And they just got it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, very wrong. But-
If you make a foundation, I can understand why it was such a controversy because this is like the foundation. If you get this wrong, you're building a house of cards on a foundation that doesn't exist.
Exactly, which is why all these ecumenical councils, like Nicaea and Constantinople and Chalcedon and a lot of the others, focus on who is Jesus. Let's get this right.
Because if we get this right, everything else will fall into place.
Yes. So, now we get to this big long list of names. So all of these, minus these two, are primarily theologians. Jerome does write some theological stuff, but he's more historian, as is Eusebius, but they are during this time. So they're still early enough that they can kind of like, it had the original historical tellings of things have not kind of played the whole telephone game, so they've not gotten too washed away. There's two interesting people that I definitely want to mention today, and that's Athanasius of Alexandria and Macrina, I think I'm saying that right, who's the sister of Gregory of Nyssa. So Athanasius of Alexandria is interesting because everybody wants to say that Christianity is white European religion. Obviously, none of these people on here are white Europeans. They're all Middle Eastern, with the exception of Athanasius, who's actually black and African.
Ethiopian?
I think also Ambrose. I think he's actually from.
If I remember correctly, Ethiopia
Around
was like one of the
Carthage.
earliest adopters of Christianity, or at least their
They were.
version of Christianity.
They were, and that actually is because of the eunuch that Philip witnessed to. He took it straight back
to
to Ethiopia and spread it there.
I said he was born in Alexandria.
Okay.
If I remember
So
correctly,
he's,
the
he's
order-
more or less Egyptian.
Like, there were 4 realms that adopted Christianity.
But
but
Maybe it's
Pictures,
Ambrose.
just the
Ambrose,
one dude
Ambrose
like
may be
me.
the one that I'm thinking of.
There's 4 states that adopted Christianity really quickly in the 300s. It was Ethiopia, Armenia, Iberia, and Rome.
Yep. But Athanasius was at the Council of Nicaea, although he did not necessarily take part in a lot of the discussions. We know a lot of it because he took a lot of notes. And then we get to these 3 gentlemen. These are considered the Cappadocian fathers. They come from that general area of Cappadocia. All 3 were very prolific writers. You can still read their stuff today. They actually have some really good ones. I think it's Gregory of Nyssa. I'm reading a book of his that's interesting. But the interesting thing about his sister is she was actually one of the reasons why he became a presbyter and later a bishop, or presbyter bishop, kind of same idea. But she was devout in her Christian beliefs and was actually a heavy influence on him. So a lot of his writings kind of stem from his sister's influence.
That's cool.
So yet again, that's another thing that people like to throw at Christianity is like, we're misogynist. No, we're not. And there's lots of things we could.
Their definition of misogyny is basically, do you believe that women and men have separate roles in society?
Kind of.
If you do, you're a misogynist. That's their definition, which I think is stupid.
Yeah.
But Basil and both Gregories kind of became quite the powerhouse. And I do use that term a little bit loosely. They didn't necessarily hold a lot of power, but they were very influential in the Christian church at this time because they wrote in defense and kind of actually wrote down more of the Orthodox beliefs. A lot of people will point to this and be like, oh, here's the development of theology, but everything that they wrote about Orthodox had pretty much already, like the Orthodox Church, the church as a whole had already basically said, we believe this. It's just, we don't necessarily need to write it down. Because why? And now it's like, okay, now we need to write this down.
We're getting to the
Because
point
you had
where
so
it
many
needs to be written down.
Yeah, because
Because
now we've
it's-
got so many voices saying like, oh no, it's not the Trinity, it's something else.
If you want to see how damaging these heresies can be, North Africa was once a very Christian area, but it got so racked by heresy that when Islam came, within a century, they all went away. Like
Oh, yeah.
within a century, it was
Yeah.
so rapid that you almost didn't even see. It was almost impossible to even find any Christian remnants because of how
Mhm.
fast it was.
But I would definitely encourage y'all to read some of their writings. They're very intriguing. I think the thing I love the most about pretty much all of the like early church writings is they don't pull punches. They don't sugarcoat stuff.
They're just like,
It's
that's how it is.
Heretic.
pretty much, well, I mean, so we covered the Didache, which is a first century writing that is heavily influenced by the 12 apostles, it's supposedly written by the 12. There's not really any evidence to support that, but it specifically states that if a missionary or like a traveling bishop comes and stays at your house for more than 3 days, kick him out. I mean, that's basically what it says. Like, he's worth his wages, but if he stays too long, like, he needs to get on the road and do his job. Like, he needs to do his calling, get out.
It's like, all right,
And it's
3
hilarious.
days are up. Pack your stuff and get out.
Yeah, it's
Basically,
Or
almost,
rather, you
almost
not
like
get
an
out,
eviction notice.
more like
almost,
it's like you gotta go out and start missionizing. You can't.
It's
When
like-
you say stay, you mean like he just stays in and doesn't go out at all?
Mhm. Well, I mean, like, if he is called to go and preach for a time and then leave, kind of like Paul, but he stays too long, like he's not doing his mission work, you need to be like, hey, remember that Jesus thing? Yeah, get out. Go do
It's
that.
like, we appreciate you being here.
Mhm.
Please leave.
Yeah.
They're almost saying politely, almost like an eviction notice in a way, almost like.
Do you have overstage or what?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You have
Basically,
you remember the Jesus
Keep
thing?
yourself
Yeah,
welcome
get out.
somewhere else.
You've been evicted.
Yeah.
You're eating all my food. Please leave.
But they have there's a lot of stuff like that that's it's not sugarcoated at all. It's just like, here's what people say. Yeah, I don't believe that. That's not right.
That's funny.
John Chrysostom is kind of an interesting character. He is the bishop in Constantinople. And one of his biggest accomplishments was hand copying the scriptures on gold leaf. And I believe the original still exists.
How did he manage to get gold leaf?
I mean, like, it's real thin sheets of gold.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I'm saying.
Very difficult. It's very expensive to use and
It's
very
very
difficult
expensive.
to get.
He's like, I'm gonna write scriptures on here.
It probably wasn't as difficult then to get as it was today, because gold was just more popularly used as currency and whatnot. But
That's fair.
but he also has some very
Yeah, it's so
interesting
expensive.
things to say, and has a lot of writings about a lot of stuff. We do get a lot of expounding on liturgy at this time. So we've got a lot of writing on theology and what we believe, but also how do we actually go about doing worship. So that kind of adds to the interesting value to it. All right. Augustine, he's more influential in the 5th century than he is in the 4th. He was born, I believe, like 350, 360, but he's probably one of the most interesting people in my point of view, because he spent a lot of his time in heresy. He was a follower of Manichaeism, tongue twister. Basically,
religion of Islam, Zoroastrianism, and Christianity.
yeah, it was a mixture of a lot of different things. They believed that, like, one of the main things was, like, denying yourself made you holier. And a lot of that there were two main forces. There was the light and the dark, and you can kind of see that bleed over in his most famous work, which is The City of God, is this essay comparing the city of God, i.e. the light, with the city of man, i.e. the dark. So you still kind of see some of this, but it's kind of a redeemed form of that view.
Well, heresy usually involves at least a kernel of truth in it. That's usually
Oh, yeah.
how it starts.
And of course, due to time.
taken in a wrong direction is basically the best way to describe most heresy.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, next time we'll pick up with Ambrose and them. One of the interesting things about this particular period is just how much writing we actually have as opposed to previous centuries. A lot of that is due to the fact that it's no longer illegal to be a Christian, so you can actually openly talk about this stuff. This is also during the 300s is when we get our first actual building that is a church. Prior to this, it was always we'll go to the synagogue and then we'll go to somebody's house and discuss what was taught, or we'll just meet at someone's house.
Or the woods.
Yeah, or wherever.
Wherever
A lot of people in in Rome would meet in the catacombs, which is actually why the Romans thought that they were an offshoot of. There was a very popular pagan religion. I want to say it's like Mithraism or something.
I think it is Mithraism.
Because there was a lot of comparisons.
First
they
they thought
believed.
it was part of Judaism, then they're like, oh no, they're
Yeah.
they didn't know how to classify
Yeah.
Christians.
Well, they.
We're steep.
So Mithraism, if I've got the name right, believed in one God who came into physical reality and who ended up dying. And so blood was a very important thing. Actually, to become a convert, they would go into catacombs with a hole in the roof, and you would stand under this hole, and then they would slaughter a bull above the hole, and so the blood would come pouring down.
Oh, that's fun.
So there's a lot of similarities.
Look,
Oh,
you see some messed up pagan rituals.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
up what the Babylonians did.
Oh, yeah.
There's some interesting things out there. Although, well, prior to this also, a lot of the Romans believed that they accused Christians of being atheists because they didn't believe in the gods. They also said that they were into incestual marriages because all the Christians called each other brother and sister.
There were so many things that if you didn't know the context of, I
Oh,
can
yeah.
see why Romans were
Oh, yeah.
freaking out.
Well, and the other
cannibalism,
thing,
cannibalism.
yeah, cannibalism was the other thing because when we take the Lord's Supper, it symbolizes what?
Flesh and blood.
Yeah. So they talk about eating the flesh and drinking his blood, and they're like, the Romans are looking back and be like, I know we're strange, but y'all are weird. We do some things, but that's a little too far.
There was also talks about how they wouldn't serve it. There was a big problem. There was a big issue after Rome became Christian. It was about how it was how do you reconcile God's belief to not kill with having to fight on military to defend your borders.
That was a huge discussion during this time, and that's actually one thing.
Back before
that actually
this-
does remind me. Another thing, and we'll talk more about this next Sunday. There is an Augustinian theology of war that we still use today.
It's the declaration idea that
It's the just war idea.
oh yeah.
And you'll hear it all the time. This is a just war. They are quoting Augustine. There were certain specific things that Augustine was like, if this happens, this happens, this happens.
It's
a
so
just
funny
war.
because back before Augustine, if a ruler wanted a war, he got a war. Simple as.
Just because you
It's simple as.
Yeah.
There was no need to justify it. It's I want to conquer you. I'm going to conquer you. And in
But-
some areas, it's still applied, but in
Yeah.
Europe, that was no longer tolerable. You had to have a just reason to actually try. I am conquering this land because I have a right to it, aka William the Conqueror
Yeah.
or Henry V.
Well, and it's interesting because
I'm conquering these people because they're pagan.
a
Or
lot of people who are non-Christian and who tout this, Christianity was not founded on Christian principles, which most of the founding fathers were not Christians. They were deists, so they were kind of Christian-ish. Some of them were Christians,
Many of them were actually, but
but Ben Franklin, not an upstanding individual,
No, he was a
What are you
woman.
talking about? He was
was a
during the
woman.
revolution. He was in France, sleeping with, negotiating with the French government.
I mean, same
Yeah.
thing.
He was also a woman.
Um,
Wow.
also, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I looked up this. If you want a fun fact about history, look up how many potential kids Ben Franklin had, supposedly could have. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And you have Jefferson Davis, Thomas Jefferson,
Yeah.
who famously took the Bible,
Yeah.
ripped out entire sections of it that he didn't like, and then presented it as, this is my Bible.
Yeah, which funnily enough was not a new thing. That had already been, that was another discussion prior to the Council of Nicaea,
Yeah.
with what books were in it. But we'll pick up with Ambrose and Augustine and the more of the 5th century church fathers next Sunday.